Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and today I want to chat with you guys a little bit about one of these topics that comes up in the lifting world, training world, that because I changed my stance on it, seems like I still catch a lot of flack for. And a lot of people who do that don't seem to understand that my stance has changed because I'm rejecting a certain traditional bias and dogmatic mindset that I used to have, and I'm accepting new data, being open to new data and better information to make my clients, to make athletes, to make myself, to make other people better and stronger. And that's really what it comes down to, is the willingness to be open to better strength and conditioning and scientific data for the purpose of improving your own athletes and clients and yourself. And if you're not willing to do that, then you probably shouldn't be charging people money for coaching or training services or anything else. You shouldn't be, because you are refusing to accept what's going to work best for your clients based upon your own bias. And I'm just simply not willing to do that anymore. So let's come over to this idea with the sumo deadlift. People need to understand there is a very, very steep tradition in the strength world towards being biased against the sumo deadlift. And while a large number of world record holding lifters, their coaches, strength and conditioning coaches who get people all the way up into deep into MMA, into the NFL, everything else are fine with the sumo. They like the sumo, they train the sumo, they coach the sumo. They're still holders on in the other direction. The entire sport of strongman, for example, seems to be against sumo, even though they allow straps and deadlift suits and everything else and still want to count their deadlifts as being a deadlift, which is, absolutely ludicrous. Ludicrous on every level. But I digress. We have guys like Mark Ripito, who I happen to like. I happen to like the starting strength model in their work for novice lifters. I don't think it's useful for anybody else, but for novice lifters, it's phenomenal, which is an enormous demographic. That's most of the people out there. Jamie Lewis can't stand sumo. He's biased against it. I happen to like Jamie Lewis's work. I happen to like his blog. Don't read it at work, but I happen to like what Jamie does. His overall training philosophy is interesting, it's fascinating, and it works well for him, and it works for a lot of people. It's a little on the hardcore side, but it works. So a lot of these people are still against sumo. And I stayed in that camp for a very, very long time. But there comes a point where you have to be objective and look at these lifts and realize, for the majority of your training, for a non-novice, I don't care about the novice in this one, because I think the conventional deadlift is easier to learn. It's easier to learn. And making something easy to learn is necessary for a novice, because they have to focus on getting these movement patterns down. But I've come to realize that as far as everything else goes, generally the sumo is a better modality. Because simply put, it's easier on your lower back, easier to recover from. I mean, it's to the point to where I will have people come in my comment section and say, well, I'm thinking of doing the trap bar deadlift instead of the conventional deadlift because it's easier on my lower back. And I'm like, why do you need to go buy a trap bar for that? And by the way, I'm not against trap bar deadlifts. I think trap bar deadlifts are a very useful tool in your arsenal. I think they have their place in training. But if we are talking purely about axial loading and shear on the spine and everything else, why would you use a trap bar for that when you could do sumo? It does it even better. Right, because the trap bar deadlift, a lot of people have this idea that it's like a hybrid squat hip hinge. It really isn't. It is slightly a hair more squatty than a conventional deadlift, but it is still completely and extremely hip hinge dominant. It's not even close to being a squat. The sumo is closer on that same continuum to being a squat than that is, and it has less total shear on your lower back. Conversely, if it has less shear on the lower back, we know that we recover from it easier. Well, if we recover from it easier, that means we can do more training with it. That's why you guys see me coming in on speed day. I pull 20 singles for speed with the accommodating resistance. That's what you guys are seeing there. I've had some people look at that and they're like, oh, you only have like 315 on that bar. And they see those and they don't realize that how much chain or band tension I'm running. They think it's only like 30 or 40 pounds. And they don't realize it's speed work. I'm doing 20 of those. So, you have to look at these things and realize, though, that you can simply do more total training volume. Plus, we come over with the box squat situation. What do you know about the box squat? The box squat, we can train more total training volume. It has a higher rate of force development than in any other type of squat. So if we're talking about training athletes, and when I say athletes, I mean that as an all-encompassing term, strength-based athletes. That's everyone from powerlifters to football players to rugby players to wrestlers, to anyone in any contact sport. Any sport where you have to make physical contact against your opponent in any sport is automatically a strength-based sport no matter what. Sprinting, jumping, anything that requires you to sprint or jump is a strength-based sport, okay? The box squat has a higher rate of force development. Makes it a superior tool for athletes. The box squat also trains you to sumo deadlift better. So if your squat that you're doing, which also allows for more training volume because of the nature of it, carries over to the style of deadlift you're doing even better, then guess what? You should probably do that style of deadlift as a large chunk of your training. It doesn't have to be exclusive. Mine's not exclusive. The majority of my pulling is some variation of the sumo. It carries over. Well, the same thing with the foot position. If we talk about the ability for athletes to be able to pivot, we talk about building mobility. What is going to build more mobility? Through your adductors, abductors, everything else. A narrow footing pull from the floor or the sumo stance. The sumo stance builds more mobility. Now, you have to have the flexibility to do it, but it builds more mobility because it puts some of those specific joints and muscles into certain more stretched positions, which you have to then utilize under load. It creates better mobility. How about the ability to pivot and move on your foot? A lot of the reason that a lot of these one-legged exercises are done by coaches out there is for that very reason. They need you to be able to move through these different planes. Sumo deadlift deals with that. Because we are doing that with our feet in different positions in a much wider stance, and turned out it allows for better transfer in certain sports because we're doing these oftentimes under heavy loads. What about correcting compensatory strength? That footing itself is a mildly corrective tool towards unilateral strength imbalances. See where we're going with this? We start looking at this exercise and people want to say, oh, you're just flip-flopping arbitrarily, even though I've been promoting it for quite a long time now and I've retracted my previous stance, and I use this tool very heavily for myself. I use this tool for all of my clients who are paying me for results. It's one thing to say, oh, I'm going to put out information for people who are getting it for free. Well, you get what you pay for. You can't complain if you're getting free information. My paying clients, we utilize this because they are paying me for their results. I have a financial interest in making sure that I give them the best quality coaching that I am capable of, so they will continue to pay me. My personal biases and what I think is cool and what I think is impressive go completely out the window when my money is on the line. So that's the point we need to come over to also. One thing to have a bias is another thing when people are paying you for results. If you are coaching or training people and you allow your goofy, silly, traditional biases to get in the way of giving your clients the best possible coaching that you could, you are a garbage dumpster coach, period. And you shouldn't be taking people's money. Shouldn't be taking people's money. You're stealing money from people if that's what you're doing. So come over to the point. Sumo deadlift brings a lot to the table. Brings a lot to the table. I use it. I have my clients do it. And I'm someone who used to be against sumo. So even I'm admitting that at this point. And to me, that's ironic that it's a major point of criticism against me, is that I'm promoting sumo and I used to be against it. It's like, yeah, it's called keeping up with the data and being reasonable and being intelligent and being willing to change your mind when presented with overwhelming amounts of data that you were wrong. And continuing to learn and be the best lifter, coach, and athlete that you can be. It should be applauded. All right, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.